Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, dear colleagues, dear students. My name is Harald Badinger. I'm Vice Rector for Financial Affairs, and on behalf of the whole Rectors Council, I would like to welcome you to today's edition of the event series WU Matters, WU Talks on the topic Brands Adapting to Change. The event series WU Matters, WU Talks is part of a variety of measures through which WU fulfills its third main task alongside research and teaching, known as Third Mission. Having been in place for more than 8 years and with more than 140 events, it's probably no exaggeration to say that WU Matters, WU Talks has become a mini brand itself. Each of the 11 departments of WU organizes one of these event evenings throughout the year, and today it is the Department of Strategy and Innovation which has taken over the design of the program, which deals with the challenges of brand development and rebranding processes in times of change, including the need to balancing tradition with modern values or the global and the local perspective. It starts with a keynote lecture by Stijn de Weet, Head of Group Marketing Communications at Meyer Mellenhof. He is on his way and will be here just in time, I guess. And then the program will continue with a panel discussion, including the opportunity for the audience to join in. For a further introduction into the topic and today's program, I would like to pass on the word now to Gerhard Speckbacher, Head of the Department of Strategy and Innovation. Enjoy the evening.
Thank you very much. It's our pleasure to be the host of this WU Matters, WU Talks event. And this is a very special event because this is, I think, the only WU Matters, WU Talks event that is organized entirely by students, right? And this is, I think, a very nice thing because it's not just a group of some students, it's the group of our most motivated and our best students in the master programs. The Center of Excellence was founded many, many years ago, and the mission of the Center of Excellence is to bring together the best students of our master programs, to draw upon their different backgrounds, to bring students with very different interests and different backgrounds together and build up a group that will hopefully also stay together after they finish their studies and build up a very special network of people who not only want to show that they're more talented and more ambitious than the average. That's why Center of Excellence, because it's not just the average, but it's not only about showing higher performance than the average, but also, and this is, I think, the most important part of the Center of Excellence, also to show that they are above average and that they are excellent in terms of their contributions to society. Because I think that being more talented than other people and having higher motivation than other people also is obligation to society, right? And if you got more talent, then you have to give more to society. And I think this is the main point that I want to make about the Center of Excellence. And to make this possible, we need a corporate partner. And this year and for this group, I think that we are blessed to have a corporate partner who is not just a sponsor, who is not just a partner in terms of providing resources to this group, but to have a partner who is also participating and who is part of this group. And that is why we also chose a topic that is very much related to our corporate partner, change in brands. Life is about change, and today we will hear a lot about the change of brands, and I think our partner gave us a wonderful opportunity to gain insights on how corporations deal with their brands, how they change their brands, and how they adapt the brands to new challenges in our society. And I'm very happy to pass over to the students now. Julia is, I think, the next one. You are, I thought you were sitting somewhere there. Didn't see you here. And yeah, and you will explain all the rest and introduce all the people who will talk to you. Thank you, and I'm looking forward to you.
Hello and welcome to today's WU talk about brands adapting to change, rebranding during global challenges. The discussion was organized by the Center of Excellence, supervised by the Department of Strategy and Innovation. My name is Julia Tristel. I'm a CEMS master student and a member of the Center of Excellence. Like Mr. Speckbacher has just said, the Center of Excellence is a support program for high-performing master students that offers a number of events and networking opportunities for us students. We are very happy to have Maya Meinhof at our side as a corporate partner during these 2 years. And Maya Meinhof is among the world's leading producers of consumer packaging. So in today's rapidly evolving landscape, companies face the dual challenge of maintaining relevance amidst global challenges while also embracing the need for change. As modern consumers demand more from global brands they engage with, the pressure to evolve and adapt is greater than ever. So that is why we chose the topic of rebranding for today's WU talk. I'm looking forward to a very lively discussion on how companies can think into the future when it comes to brand development, navigate the delicate balance between global trends and also local perspectives, and reconcile tradition with modern values. So now I would like to welcome today's host, Vicky, on stage.
Thank you so much. Good evening. Welcome, everyone. We're really excited to have you here today. I know you've already heard about the topic. I'm sure it's going to be as exciting as it sounds. We have some wonderful stuff ahead for you. We have a keynote, as mentioned before, by our lovely corporate partners at and, of course, Stan, followed by a little bit of a discussion with a more convenient fireside chat-style discussion. So we're still, unfortunately, waiting for Stan to actually arrive. So now you're going to have to listen to me little talk about stuff just to fill a little bit of time. So I'd love you guys to be supportive. Help me out here a little bit. It's already awkward being on stage. But until Stan arrives, I'd love to just talk a little bit about rebranding and maybe take a few early questions or discussion topics from the crowd. We will have a Q&A after the chat as well. But for now, if anyone has anything interesting that they maybe would like to talk about when it comes to rebranding, what's the first thing that comes to your mind when it comes to rebranding? Again, help me out here. Well, they always say that, yes, of course, there we are, yes. High risk, right? High risk.
If you have already a brand, rebranding is always risk, right? So maybe you lose the value of your original brand, and the new brand perhaps, maybe it does not fit perfectly with strategy. So you need to have a strategy on a brand that fits your strategy, and I think it's something that a brand is not something that you change like a suit or something like that, right? So I think it's a great project, and if Maya Meinhof is going to do that, I think we should not only see it for today as an opportunity for us to learn about this rebranding process, but I would hope that some of you guys from the Center of Excellence perhaps also do their master thesis on and join this process, how it works out. And I think there are a lot of opportunities, because it does not happen so often that a company tries to do a strategic rebranding process. And I think we can learn a lot of it. And maybe you will do your master thesis. And if you do it, then just approach me and I will be happy to supervise it.
Well, we got an offer right there immediately, yeah. Thank you so much. No, that's a really interesting perspective. Yes? We'll just get a mic over to you, just a second.
As you have probably engaged with the topic before, before today's talk. Do you have a brand in mind that has rebranded themselves, what you find interesting?
I have more of a knowledge of the American world, which is why I will say GE. General Electric is one of the most interesting ones. Maybe not the most successful, but when I think of rebranding, I think of GE because being such an old brand, how far they've come and where they are today, it's completely different. So I hope that does semi-answer your question. I know the panel discussion will add way more later too, though.
Okay, because also GE, because they are now active in different segments, or?
Yes, and they've had to change over the years and basically rebrand themselves. But talking about rebranding, our wonderful guest is here right now. I'd really like to welcome Stan. No, thank you guys. You were great sports too. Yeah, thank you for supporting me. Yes. I'd like to welcome Stan, the head of marketing for Group.
Thank you. Thank you for filling the time.
The stage is all yours.
Super.
Absolutely.
Thank
yes.
you. Do I have a presenter or an? Here, probably. This is good. Hello. Let me. Voilà. Branding in a corporate B2B environment. So, Stan de Wit, head of Group and Marketing Communication. I'm since 2017 in Austria. So I'm used to tell people how to pronounce my name. That's my own personal branding. So it's a Belgian name. It's somewhere between Steen and Stan. So I prefer Stan. That's the easiest way to remember. So indeed from Belgium and from the Netherlands. And I love branding, so that's why I'm talking here to you. The reason that I love branding is that branding is about storytelling, and all brands, the most remarkable brands, they have a good story. So that's what we love to hear. People love stories, and that's what sticks to the minds of people. If you hear about a product, if you hear about a company, the stories that people tell. So it's a storytelling that makes a brand remarkable. And you can also say it's like a person. I mean, a brand, it gets born, it lives, it evolves. Maybe some brands also dies. But in the end, it's really an evolving thing. It has character, it has emotion, and that's what we want to connect to brands, if it's a product brand or a corporate brand. I used to work I'm still working for for these 4 companies. I'm not sure if anyone recognizes them. I'm sure that Mondi is recognizable here in Austria. First one is SCA, Swedish company. David Smith is a British company. They're all paper and packaging companies. It's not that one day I was thinking I want to build a career in paper and packaging, but I mean, I started one day and I'm still here more than 20 years later. And the interesting thing is that I was lucky enough to be part of rebranding in almost all these companies. Especially SCA and David Smith, they went to a very, very substantial rebranding, and we'll talk about later about the reasons for that. Mondi, they did a brand refresh, so they didn't change the logo. We as well in Mayr-Melnhof, that was before my time, that was in 2021. You can see the new version on top, so a bit of refinement. So we're going to talk a bit in detail on why these companies rebranded, because rebranding is expensive. If you think these companies are all about 2 to 10 million euros, more than 100 locations, I mean, the logo is everywhere. It's on the signposts, it's on T-shirts, it's on mugs, it's on pens, it's on stationery, so everywhere the logo. So if you one day go into the meeting room and you say, I want to change the brand, I mean, beware about what you're doing because it's very, very expensive. So you really need to have good reasons to define when you want to change your brand and what's going to be the impact and the value of your branding. I'm going to talk about obviously, Mayr-Melnhof. So currently, we have a new logo. So Mayr-Melnhof rebranded in 2021. Also launch of the message house. So the brand is not only the logo, the brand is also how you communicate. It's your values, it's your pillars, it's your vision. So all these elements, they make your brand. And what we are now doing is also updating our communication style. So the brand is much more than the logo. So we're now looking into how we can update the visual communication style of Mayr-Melnhof. What is also sometimes a challenge is the corporate identity and guidelines. Guidelines are there to protect your brands. So guidelines are there, they're not the rules, they're not need to be lived by every little detail, but they give direction to people, especially if you work in a multicultural environment, in an international environment. People need guidelines to communicate. You cannot just make something, copy-paste, and assume it's going to work here in Austria and same way in Lebanon or in the US. So you need to have guidelines that leave some interpretation, but give a framework on how people can communicate to protect your brands. And we also have a new communication concept that we want to communicate, but in the end, what we are missing in MM currently is a style. So really a style that underlines the ambition of the company we are. We have evolved. So some of you from Austria, you know Mayr-Melnhof as the wood company. We are the paper and packaging company of Mayr-Melnhof. And we have evolved over the years. We have grown our business, we have made acquisitions, we have more focused on high added value businesses like pharma, beauty, healthcare. So therefore you need to have a big brand. It really needs to support your messaging. So what you then do is you make a brief. It's always fun internally, say what do we want to do? We want something unique. I think always agencies, they love it when a company says we want something unique, really differentiating to support our messaging. Because that's what we do, you know, we are competing. We want to have a different style, we want to stand out from competition, and something that really appeals to your target audiences. So we are paper and packaging. Some of our biggest customers are big brands. We work with LVMH, with Dior, with Chanel, with Nespresso. So these are all brands with a big importance of their values. So if we work with them, we also want to communicate on the same level when it comes to branding, and really underlining our ambition. So if we say we want to lead in consumer packaging, we also need to show that through our branding. So how do you start? This is a brand value matrix. So this is an exercise you can do internally. Say, okay, who are we? Where are we standing? So you can see here on the top the ethics to aesthetics, and from harmony to potence to strength. In B2B, it's quite normal that we are in the top quarter here. So it's about security, performance, efficiency. So these are common values that you can connect to a B2B brand. But also with the words evolving, we want to be more about passion. I mean, passion is important in our communication. Same about flexibility. With sustainability, we also need to be much more future-oriented. So these elements, they play in our branding. So if we talk about MM, these are brand values we want people to remember. Secondly, you look at the competition. So you look at the whole competitor landscape. What are they doing? What is their messaging? What is their logo type? What is their visuals? Because these are all paper and packaging companies. Some overlaps, some specializations here and there. But if you want to stand out, you need your own communication and your branding style. Also your logo. I mean, we have a quite simple, but it stands out. It's a green dot. Also in terms of digital, it needs to work really well. So that's important. And next, you look into the market. So your customers. What is the market doing? What is important to your customers? How do we see more natural trends in terms of colors, in terms of shape, authenticity? So all these elements that you see in your customer base, if we are in front of a brand manager of one of these companies, then we want to stick on the same level. So we need to understand what they are doing. Then, unfortunately, I cannot show you what we are working on because it's confidential. So maybe I can show you later privately what we have, but this is going to be launched in September. Our new brand style, it's really exciting. People internally also love it. But I cannot show it here on the screen, but I'm willing to show you afterwards on the laptop. Another story, quickly, is a story about SCA. So that was my first employer, and that's also an interesting one because SCA started in 1929, Svenska Cellulosa Aktiebolaget, as a merger of paper companies. And you see in their logo that they have the chain blades from forests as a representation of their business. Then in 1975, they grew the business over the years. They did forests, pulp, paper, packaging, and also hygiene. So they started to purchase the first time hygiene companies. And further evolvement to 2013, they sold off the hygiene business. the soul of the packaging business, a quite more hygiene business, and then you see the evolvement in the logo, so where it's quite sharp and edgy here in B2B. They more go to consumer brands. They sell Libero, Libresse, Tork, Sewa, all hygiene companies. So it needs to be more feminine. It needs to be more rounder. So your logo needs to adapt to the changing environment of your business. And then they even went a step further. That in 2017 they split up the company in 2 companies with their own branding. So SCA went back to forest and pulp and paper. And Essity, coming from essentials and necessity, was the new company they created for all their hygiene business. So the reason why they do that, I mean, when we talk about the reasons of branding or even here, a new company, is that you focus on your core business. I mean, if you do and forest and hygiene, I mean, it's not really the same type of business. So if you want to have a good story that is easy to tell, say, why are we in the hygiene business and why are we in the forest business, that's a reason to adjust your branding and to have individual branding for your businesses. So, to summarize, when do companies rebrand? What I've learned over the last years is changing market environments. That was the example of SCA. So you evolve as a company. I mean, there are not many brands that never evolve. I was Googling and said, okay, what brands have not evolved? Twillings is one, the tea. Apparently, that's the oldest brand I could find that has never changed. But market is changing, new businesses are coming, so you always adapt to changing environments. Rebirths, so when you talk about mergers and acquisitions, I was also part of SCA when they sold to DS Smiths. Suddenly, if 2 big companies come together, it's also an opportunity for reviewing your company values and your branding. What you can do is say, okay, we acquire this company and we apply our values on the acquired company, but what DS Smith did is, okay, we are 2 companies from similar size, so we're going to start from 0. So what are we good in? What are the strengths? What are we standing for? And they really took that opportunity to create a new brand for the company. Obviously, when you are, outdated, and when your brand is outdated, again, with social media, with digital, it's very important that your brand can live digitally. And your target audiences, because your brand needs to communicate. So you want to appeal to your target audience, and therefore adaptation of your brand, because in the end it's about stories. We like to tell stories. Brands are stories that we need to connect. If it's a company, if it's people, if it's also here, the VU is also a very strong brand in Austria. So that's what makes a good brand, and I hope you will enjoy it and learn more about it. It's very exciting. As I said, it always keeps evolving. So thank you for your attention and looking forward to the discussion. Thank you.
Thank you so much. That was really, really amazing. And always having the opportunity to meet people who work in the industry and actually do the work that we like to talk about is always great. I'd love for you to have a seat, actually, because we now move towards our little panel discussion. So, of course, we have Stan right here. You met him, you've heard him. But there are more people who will be joining us on the panel today. So I'd like to start with Julia, of course. So Julia is one of the leading members of the CEE. And she's one of the people who the Center of Excellence, who really relies on her. And she'll be here with us as a SEMC student as well today here. We also have Triumph, who is the Vice President of the Marketing Club at VU. And he'll be joining us along with the Head of Corporate Partnerships at the Marketing Club, Elena. So I'd love for you guys to have a seat. I promise that we'll have a fun conversation at the very least. So, yes, please.
Thank you.
All right. Everyone settled? Everyone cool?
Yes.
Perfect. So I gave a little bit of a brief intro, but when it comes to rebranding, I thought it would be nice if each of us could have like a little mission statement almost, our perspective of where each of us stand on that topic. So maybe I'll start with Stan, and then we'll move around the panel as well. So,
I think what I just mentioned in my presentation, that where I stand on branding is the stories. I mean, everything what makes a brand remarkable is the stories you connect to it. And as a company, you can have an objective and you can have brand values identified, and these are the ones you want to communicate. So I think also what makes a brand successful is the execution, because you can make a whole strategy, you can define everything in detail and on strategic level how you would like to be perceived as a brand, but then the execution, the implementation, bringing it to life, again, the storytelling is what will make you succeed. So strategy versus reality, storytelling, that's kind of my take on branding.
Okay. Julia, do you have any thoughts on rebranding?
Yes, coming from a consumer perspective, I think rebranding can be a very powerful tool for brands to enhance the brand image and what consumers think about the brand. But I think at the same time, when not managed carefully, can also confuse customers when the brand, for example, suddenly looks very different. And especially, I think also the reason for rebranding is important, because I think, for example, if you rebrand after having a controversial event such as an oil spill, for example, it can rather backfire, I would say. So I think companies need to carefully manage that.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Elena, you worked with a few corporate partners as well in your time with the Marketing Club. What do you think of rebranding, and what have you seen in the industry?
Well, from my experience so far with the Marketing Club, we do get a lot of companies that are currently in rebranding, or they do want to rebrand, but might not even really know how to rebrand. What I have noticed is that a lot of that is driven by changing consumer behavior, predominantly by my generation, so that would be Gen Z. Because Gen Z is very different. They are more aware. We are more aware. We have more information at our fingertips, and we know a lot more about companies than they like to sell us for. So I think rebranding is definitely crucial for a lot of traditional brands to keep up in the future.
Okay, that's quite a deep start. Okay. Well, Triumph, do you have anything you'd like to add?
I think also quite important, especially for like big companies or incumbent companies who want to expansion, especially like on the Eastern side. Be careful with culture, because a lot of Eastern people have different type of cultures. The Western are more like individualized, while the Eastern people are more like collectivist. So keep in mind also like how their mindset is, the lifestyle. So that's also one of the most important factors that the company should consider when it comes to rebranding.
No, I think global versus local is the big definition when it comes to considering how we move forward in the world. But a key question a lot of companies have to ask themselves, and I know has been doing a great job of their rebranding so far, but is it a necessity? And if it is, why?
Is it a necessity? If you talk about the value indeed that a rebranding brings, and you also see what it does internally with a company, then I would say yes, because it's more than just changing the logo. So the rebranding is about the positioning, the image, the content, the stories, the values that we live. So it's a big project in a corporate environment. And if you go to a change process as a company like then your branding is the best way to make that change visible. So you've just went to a change project. We want to make that visible. We want to make that tangible. We want people to see how we have evolved. So then your branding is really the key element to bring that change, and also for people internally to buy into your brand. That people say, okay, this is the company that I work for. Previously, I was working for company X. Today, we are acquired by so we are now So to really feel part of this company, this rebranding is really a crucial part of that journey.
And how do you approach that from a professional perspective? You've obviously had a storied career. We've seen your past as well. What have you learned along the way when it comes to understanding the perspectives of, say, Gen Z or any of the other audiences that actually purchase?
I think in general, not only Gen Z, but it's all about engagement. I mean, don't start doing rebranding and strategies out of your ivory tower or your office. I mean, you need to have the connection with the organization. is also an international company. What works, as you mentioned, in one country doesn't necessarily work in another country, so you need to be aware about cultural differences. When you talk about brand values or cultural values you connect to your brand, there are some quite generic. We talk about passion, collaboration, being result-focused, so these are generic values. So how you bring them to life is really to look for the local stories. Say, how are we passionate in our operations in Tehran versus our operations in Lebanon versus US? I mean, so everyone has their own stories, and that's how you can, I think, build in that cultural differences. Say, you have universal values that everyone can agree upon, and then the local implementation is how people live those values locally.
I think values is one of those things that we don't really think about on a daily basis, but it's super important when it comes to assessing what a company even means or what they stand for. Since you brought it up in terms of being more global and consideration of the other perspectives, what do you think people around the world, we're making a generalization now, but around the world, what do they actually value? You can separate it into different segments, but what do they look for in a company today?
I think the most important part is like identity. Like, can I really identify myself with the brand? So do like a little bit of research about each like country maybe, and build like a common, like a ground pattern where everyone feels involved with the brand. So I'd say like identifying like identity, social identity, or like identity is like the most important.
Yeah, I think identity also ties into Gen Z because we're so used to, I don't know, we want to identify with the things that we live with, we buy, everything.
No, it's important. I mean, especially, I mean, we also do recruitment. My colleagues of HR are also sitting there. So we know, indeed, when you have a Gen Z recruiting, then they want to buy into the story. They want to believe that they join a company that is doing the right things and that has sustainability as a top priority and not as a buzzword. So it's I think authenticity and is a key element for your brands.
I really want to touch on that because you did talk about hiring and employees. During a rebranding, of course, there's almost a lot of cultural and shifts and changes that happen. How do you stay true to what the organization used to be in terms of potential values, and how do you make sure your employees change along the way? Sorry.
I mean, you can measure that by employee surveys, what is an important tool in an organization, international organization. So you can measure the overall employee satisfaction, and in those employee surveys you can also measure how companies are perceiving the brand. Say, are we living up our values? Do we feel we are responsible? Do you feel we are passionate? So that's a way how internally you can get a feeling of where we are today and also where we want to go. Plus also it's still, I mean, classic face-to-face. I mean, talking to people, I say we cannot stay in our ivory tower here in Vienna. We need to go out, we need to talk to the people locally. So the networking and it's something that you see growing over the years. I've seen it in other companies as well. It's something that needs to grow organically from the bottom up. So we, on the central level, you can define a strategy and your brand and your values and do some reviews and get input. But in the end, it needs to work locally. And you see that happening after a couple of years when these programs have run out and workshops have been done and people start to embrace it and they start to share things on social media and more initiatives are coming. So then you start seeing these brand values come alive. But it's a process.
And we've heard the employer, maybe now from a more young potential employee perspective. What do you look for?
Oh, that's a great question. Well, I personally think that it starts at the top. I think that having managers and having leadership that is open to embrace change and open to hear out ideas and new innovations and sort of foster this culture where you are allowed to ask questions and question things in general is a very big part of it. I think that's what, I mean, it's personally what I look for in a future employer because you want to know that this is something where you can also personally involve yourself in and evolve in the future. And joining an organization where you're told to not ask questions or just do it the way it's been done the past 10 years is not helpful, I would say. So, yeah, I think that for me, it's about leadership and it's about managers that allow their employees to help create this culture.
Yeah, I think culture is particularly one of those things which it needs to be nurtured naturally. It's not something that can just be pushed into an organization. But even when it comes to the customer's culture today, we've touched upon it earlier as well, but I think I love that slide that you had up there with the different colors of the companies, because I think that's so relevant. Like, we don't think about these soft factors that actually make us more attracted to a product. So, Mr. VP of Marketing, Trim, I'd love for you to tell me a little bit more about what you think people look for now. What do we connect to and why? Is rebranding necessary for us to stay in touch?
I think it's definitely necessary to do some rebranding, because especially now we are living like in a dynamic time, so there's constantly change happening, and if we still maintain, it's good to have like the patterns, the same patterns, but also like try to implement new changes over time, because if you don't adapt to change, eventually some other company will take your brand over. So yes, rebranding itself would be good, but as I mentioned, like the patterns, for example, like a color palette is like one pattern that everyone, like, if I say, for example, Burberry. Burberry has like these same stripe type of patterns, and if we can see also all the new Burberry products, they always have like the same color patterns, but they also try to make new changes and also try to adapt these patterns to new customers. So maybe, yeah, keep these colors and all these essentials like the same, but try to be a little bit innovative when it comes to products.
But also when you talk about brand, I mean, I think also in these days when the world is a bit shaky and there's a bit of instability, that also stabilizing can be, I mean, especially I think old brands that you're familiar with, people also like stability. I mean, when something is good, I'm not going to say reinvent the wheel, you don't need necessarily to, I follow your reasoning when you talk about evolution and the patterns of a brand. But I think also sometimes, I mean, you don't need to change rebranding for the sake of rebranding. So as I said, I mean, rebranding is costful. So you really need to have a good business case that you say, okay, this is what our market is demanding, what customers are saying. So there is an opening or a reason for rebranding that will give us value, but you really need to have a good case to go into your boardroom and say, guys, I think we're gonna rebrand this product or rebrand this company, because it's quite a big exercise. Depending, of course, on the size of the company.
No, there are definitely many challenges associated with rebranding, for sure. Do you think that customer feedback helps you in deciding whether rebranding is necessary, though? Or is it more of an internal choice?
No, because internally it's fed by feedback that you get from the market. So I don't think there's always very clear divide between internal and external feedback. I mean, in the end, we're all people, and if we feel internally that our brand is out of date, also people externally will say that our brand is out of date or is not matching with the values anymore. So it definitely helps the discussion if you need to convince people. If you say our top customers are saying that, you know, our brand style is not really up to date anymore. I mean, that's an argument that can help building your story. But I think if that happens, that also should be visible internally.
I think Julia is someone who I was talking to earlier, actually off topic, but about customer centricity. And you had some thoughts on that topic, so I'd love to hear from you on that.
Yeah, I mean, as a customer, it's always important that you kind of connect to the brand and you see yourself in the brand, or somehow can identify yourself with the brand. And I think if that is not given, and if you feel very disconnected to the brand, whatever the reason, then you will decide not to buy the product and decide for a competitor's product. So I think it's very important that from a rebranding perspective, you always look at the customer as well.
And what would you say are one of the main drivers when it comes to companies shifting towards customer demands?
I mean, I think sustainability is a big driver. And I think especially from persons from Generation Z, we look mostly at sustainability also when making customer and buying decisions. So when buying products, we always think about whether these products are sustainable, also whether the packaging is sustainable, and if they're recyclable. And I think I mean, it may not be the most important buying decision, but it definitely influences. So that's very important.
It's really nice that you brought up sustainability, because that was the next little thing on my card right here. Yeah, very convenient for me, because there is something that is prevalent when it comes to brands and social media, and maybe this is a personal opinion, but there's a difference between green marketing and greenwashing, and a lot of brands are struggling with finding where they stand on that issue. So I just thought it would be interesting to get your perspective first, Stan, on how views this as a topic.
We are only green marketing. No, I mean, you cannot afford it as a stock-listed company in the paper and packaging business to even think about greenwashing. I mean, there is nothing getting out of the company when it comes around sustainability. There's all the sign-offs from all the different departments, going from legal to sustainability to corporate. So it's simply, I mean, it's top of our mind. But I think the difference is simply between transparency and accuracy. I mean, say we work with big brands. These big brands, they have goals and commitments when it comes to packaging. It needs to be recyclable, it needs to be renewable, it needs to have a lower carbon footprint. And in the end, that's all data. So in corporate environment, sustainability is all about data, because you need to report on your progress. We all make these goals and commitments that by 2025 and 2030, our entire packaging offering will be sustainable. And then if you talk about sustainable, then the next question is, what is sustainable? Are we talking about recyclability? Are we talking about the material? So it's a very complex topic. So I told you, once we start here, I can talk for hours on sustainability. But it's so important. And it's really, data driven. Our customers need data, and consumers need data. I think also the EU Commission will issue the Green Claim Directive to go against greenwashing. All the B2C companies claiming, say, we are biodegradable or fully recyclable, or so you will need to be able to prove your messaging with LCA, with data, right, to support an end consumer, because I really can believe that even for us in the business, sometimes it's getting confusing. And then indeed, an end consumer, he wants to buy a product and really wants to do good, say, I want to buy something sustainable, but there are so many logos and labels out there that in the end you don't know, I mean, what is sustainability? And there I think the EU will support on this Green Claim Directive to make it more clear to people on what is sustainable and what is greenwashing and what is green marketing.
No, I really have to credit the EU there for the regulations as well, leading the world on that front, which is always a good thing. But I think at the end of the day, companies who are operating in as many countries, I think it's 34 or so at the moment. I could be wrong, it may be more now. But how do you balance that when it comes to different regulations and different styles of consumers? Maybe price sensitive versus actually sustainability sensitive?
I think overall, I mean, also the fact that we are a paper company makes us already easier, because our material is fully recyclable. Also, when it comes to our production, it doesn't make a difference if we are selling our paper in different continents, because everything is certified. So there are no big differences. The fact that we also work with international brands who operate globally is that there are no real differences between our packaging that we sell in one region versus another region. I can't say for other types of packaging material, but the fact indeed that we are an EU-based company, that we need to report on our progress, means that over all our operations we have the same standards when it comes to sustainability, when it comes to reducing your carbon footprint, working with green energy, so that's what's driving the business.
Elena, I'd love to ask you about greenwashing and your thoughts, because I know that it's tricky for marketers to approach it without seeming disingenuous, feeling fake. How do marketers approach it? How do we try to be authentic while actually being true to ourselves?
Mm-hmm. Well, I think it ties into what you just said, that it's about fact-checking. I think the more actual information you have access to, the better it is. Mm-hmm. I think oftentimes when companies are caught greenwashing, I don't think it's necessarily intentional. I think it comes down to just lack of information. I mean, if you take, for example, I don't know, there was a car company scandal a couple years ago about certain emissions and stuff, and
I wonder who.
yeah, I don't want to get sued. No, but I think, for example, in that case, if the leadership knows what is going on, and if your employees are telling you, and you still choose to reject it in hopes of gaining traction in the market, that is, I think that's blatant greenwashing. But then there are companies where, you know, if your supplier on a different continent tells you that we are sustainable and, you know, we can certify everything, and listen, everything is fact-checked and everything is green, but then it turns out that it isn't, it is kind of a difficult thing. It's a difficult position to be in as a marketer, but at the same time, that's why I would say the best approach is to fact-check first, see what you as a company are dealing with, what resources you have at your disposal, what information you have at your disposal.
Right.
And also personally, I think that with consumers nowadays, it works even better when you can show proof of it. You know what I mean? When you really go into and show how the procurement works, where your packaging actually comes from, in your case, where your products are sourced, like this like farm to table talk. I would say that that works very, very well. So not even attempted, really, but just work with what you have.
Work with what you have is usually good advice anyway. But true. Does this even work? Greenwashing? Like in today's world, we're supposed to be quite literate. We're supposed to be social media literate. Does it work?
Well, sort of actually, because we do have like cases as we see H&M having like the scandal of greenwashing. So people do use social media as a way to showcase we are green, but then once you do like the data check, which is not possible for every customer because there's certain companies or certain consultants who do have access to the data, it showcases that yes, some companies do use greenwashing as a marketing criteria just to attract the customers. But yeah, at the end of the day, transparency would be good. That's why like EU is like the leading country that pushes institutions to do like laws to showcase that transparent data. But also a good example would be Puma, that used like, it showcased a documentation on how it uses how it recycles plastic products to produce their new shoe collection. So that would be also like good way to approach if a company is green, showcase it. Do like a documentary why you are green.
Right. So use your actual good practices as marketing in itself,
exactly.
rather than lying in a way. Maybe lying is a bit too strong a word, but but that does bring up the topic of authenticity, because brands are now striving, because of the topics we've discussed so far. Customers like authenticity and they gravitate towards authenticity. But I really do want to ask each of you, actually, one by one. We'll start with Julia, of course. But authenticity, what does that mean in terms of a brand context? What should it mean?
I think having a brand that customers can connect to, can identify themselves with. Regarding sustainability, I think authenticity also means having enough sustainability reporting, having measurable impact, so not only saying we're doing this and that for sustainability, but actually showing the numbers, having something that actually showcases the impact of sustainability. So I think having enough reporting about that helps being authentic also to the customer, and also having clear communication and clearly communicating your brand image to the customer is very important. Stan, I'd love your thoughts as well. Or maybe we can go next if you need a little bit more time.
No, I was just thinking of different examples. Also in our example, authenticity. I mean, we are an Austrian company with a long history, and that's something we cherish. But we also evolve, so it's kind of finding the best of both worlds. So we are proud of our Austrian heritage and the fact that we also still for largely are privately owned, what is unique in the business. So when I showed you that brand value matrix, so there are some authentic values that were connected to MM in the past that we still want to capture, that we still want to keep, and then indeed you want to evolve. So it's making that analysis of what are your valued, most important values that define your authenticity, but then you still want to also define what gives you the more modern touch that can address the different generations. And then I think the authenticity comes from everything that you see about the brand. It's not the marketing talk, but I think it's indeed how consumers and employees are acting with the brand that shows if this is authenticity or not.
Yeah, Elena?
I think it's two things. I think it's one thing to be an authentic brand, and another to communicate that to the consumers from a marketing perspective. And I think that's why user-generated content, UGC, works so well, why TikTok has exploded in the past couple of years, especially in terms of marketing, because it not only connects the consumer to something real, but it's something that they actually see that is real. And on that point, I also think it's important to find the right messenger. You would want someone who, let's say a celebrity, the creator economy is becoming ever so big. So there's many like celebrities and influencers that are becoming messengers of brands, but more so values. I think LeBron James is a very good example. He has become an ambassador for Nike, but more so a messenger of where they stand in terms of many of their values, especially social values. I don't think that would work as well if it was a different athlete, because we know that LeBron James has been always throughout his career. I mean, people that follow sports know it.
I'd hope so. Yeah.
we know that that is someone who has always been very close to his community and who has always been very authentic as a person himself, and that's why I think it works. And so I think it's one thing to be an authentic brand, but sometimes because of marketing or because of bad market perceptions, you just don't come across that way. And it's another thing to also find someone to be able to communicate that message to consumers.
Last but not the least.
I think social values are also quite important, especially like morality, because we can see like a little shift, or even see like Gen Z students boycotting certain companies because they don't follow up what they're actually talking about. So also keep in mind that you should stand for what you're marketing for, and try to reduce things that are actually bad for a moral perspective.
I was reading today about the Raiffeisen incident in Russia. I'm not sure if their brand authenticity.
That the Raiffeisen is giving jobs to Russia.
They say they were dropping out of the Russian market. At the same time, they are promoting and saying we're doubling our business. So then your brand values and your messaging are not really aligned.
And it's also words versus action and whether they actually align.
Exactly. I mean, as you say, marketing can, the moment people find out. I mean, it's very difficult, I think, these days to trying to be authentic and expecting or hoping that people are not seeing through your marketing talk. So I think people are these days really checking brand for their authenticity.
Right. No, I think that's one of the biggest challenges because, as I joked about earlier, but we are very tech literate. We have the world's knowledge at our fingers if we choose to exercise it. So customers are aware, marketers are also, or at least should be, aware of that reality as well. But just zooming out for a second and then going back to the overall topic of rebranding, since we've discussed many different avenues that cover it, I just thought we could go back to the start and think about where we are today in the marketplace, where brands are today overall. What are the challenges that a company faces on the most simple level when it comes to rebranding? And perhaps we could start with you, Triumph.
I think there's a massive change when it comes to designing to keep it minimalistic. Simplicity is quite, especially if we watch the car industry, or especially also Pringles, so we can see a massive change from trying to design complex to more simple and yet, how you say it, more it should be minimalistic, simplicity, and it should be attractive the customer.
Right. I mean, trends change, times
Yeah.
change.
But yeah, we can see like a huge change in like designing that is more like minimalistic and simplistic approach.
Any thoughts, Julia?
Yes, I think adding to that, I think it's important that the brand is simple, but at the same time it should still be catchy for the customer, but also unique, because there are so many brands out there. And I think sometimes it can be quite easy to, just switch up different brands because they look similar. And I think that can even lead to lawsuits if they look too similar. So I think that's also something to keep in mind.
Elena, and then we'll head over to Stan after.
Well, one big challenge that we at the Marketing Club have seen when we work with our corporate partners is that it's hard to keep your brand, well, not your value, but your brand design and your brand look across all these different social media platforms, in real life, online. I mean, there's so many distribution channels nowadays. There's so many different ways that a brand can be perceived. I would say a big challenge is keeping the same design, the same sort of message, same logo, all across the board.
The design language consistency and
but at the same time doing that while not appearing too boring or too corporate.
Right.
One, I think, great example is Duolingo.
Okay.
The language app.
Right.
They have done a great job, especially in TikTok, by becoming a little bit less corporate and appearing a little bit less constrained and you know, they're not optimized. They're not. It doesn't look. It looks authentic. It looks real, and that works on TikTok. Does not work as well on LinkedIn, for example. And I think they've done a great job balancing that by appearing a little bit more inauthentic on TikTok, and then obviously being a lot more authentic, professional on LinkedIn. But without losing what the company is about and what they do and who their customers are.
So it doesn't matter which channel you're looking at. At the very least, you need to stay true to yourself, but attract the audience. I mean, I'm old enough to still remember when companies had jingles, you know, like the little song in their ad. I miss those. I wonder where they went. But now I guess you need to be on TikTok to get there. So, Stan, I'd love to hear your thoughts as well.
I'm going back to the practical aspect. I think the most difficult aspect of rebranding is, first of all, deciding if you are going to rebrand.
Right.
Everything else is technical, and you definitely need to consider all the elements that have been brought to the table. But I mean, also you need to imagine if you're in such a company and even you say, okay, we want to be more modern and we're going to do a slight evolution of the brands, a bit more simple, a bit more easy recognizable. I mean, you always have people say, why did we pay for this and how much money is this going to cost? So really your internal sales pitch on saying, why are we going to rebrand and what is going to be the value and why are we doing this? I mean, that's for me still the most difficult part of a rebranding, on preparing your whole case and getting people on board and enthusiastic about your project.
I have to agree with that too. Yeah. I'm looking at the clock, and I know that we'll start our Q&A in about 5 minutes. But before that, I just thought that we'd have some closing thoughts. Overall, where do you feel the future of corporate rebranding is, whether it's from a marketer's perspective, whether it's from an actual corporate perspective? How is it going to change 5 years from now? What is the future of companies and how they will approach rebranding?
I think, also looking at, my own company again, that there is still a lot of opportunities to be done because there are still so many big unknown companies who don't value rebranding or their brands, who just take it for granted or say that their brand is their logo. And I think that's great news for all of you guys because there is still a lot of work to be done. And yeah, it's a great exercise. It's an exercise that involves the entire company. A lot of different functions are involved. It involves your customer base. It also allows you to look forward of where we are today, where do we want to be in a certain amount of time. So I think from a strategic perspective, Yeah, I mean, if you want to do it properly, it's a great project to be doing. It's very rewarding if it's done right, and especially when you see the results after a number of years, when the brand is coming to life and you see the success. I mean, that's the most rewarding part about a rebranding.
You've certainly inspired me.
Yes.
Julia, any thoughts?
I think rebranding is and will stay very important. Having a brand that customers see, that customers can relate to. And I think having a strong brand is becoming more and more important in today's world of having so many different options to choose from. So I think having strong brands will be a very valuable aspect for companies.
Oh. Sure.
I believe that in the future, especially sustainability and morality will be the most important factor, especially because the new generation is focusing on that a lot more. So keep that in mind, and build like an identity, because you only attract your customer if you know what you're selling, who you are, and what makes your product attractive, because that's the audience you are trying to attract.
Yeah, on that note, I think that companies will evaluate rebranding a lot more carefully in the future. It is becoming ever so costly too. It's a big undertaking, and especially with all the information that we have, it will make it easier to evaluate these things too. So I don't think we will see as many rebrands, but we will see, if we do see them, I think we will see big rebrands. I think we will see complete shifts in brands.
All right. Well, I'd like to thank all the wonderful participants that we have here. They're going to stay here. We have the questions coming up. Don't worry. Please don't run away yet. But I really would like to thank them for such, at least I hope, an enlightening discussion. I've really enjoyed learning from all of you. And I'd love to now open it up. I have my friend in the back with the mic who's going to walk around, but I'd love for you to raise your hand if you'd like to ask any questions. I already see an early hand, so I'm going to have to call you out there. Could we get a mic to her, please?
Yeah.
Floor is yours.
I'm a graphic designer, and I just finished my visual communication bachelor degree last year. So, and I also want to be a brand designer in the future. So I think for me, rebranding is a combination of marketing and design. So I think I'm not so good at storytelling or selling my ideas to the companies. So that's why I'm now here at one semester at WU. So I want to ask, so how can I improve my storytelling skills when I want to sell my logo design or visual identity system design to the companies before the companies selling their products or service to their customers? And I also want to know for companies what brand design presentation, a good brand design presentation should be. Yeah.
No, that's a really interesting question. And I do know we have a designer on the stage. I'm going to look at my friend Triumph over there. Maybe you can answer the part about what design is in the future and how we can improve.
I can talk about how to do like storytelling. Especially, it would be good if you like get to know your company a little bit, because we have, for example, Nike is just their logo, and the slogan is "Just Do It." So they basically film sports events where people just pushing their limits and just constantly running or just telling themselves, do it, go harder. So keep a look at the company, what they're selling, and try to emphasize the company a little bit more, and like try to be in the position of the customer. And so try to know your company and know their customers. Once you have built that, you can then apply the storytelling.
And practice.
Practice.
It's easy, it sounds easy, but really, just practice.
Yeah, it's not really that easy. Just practice makes perfect, to be honest.
Does anyone else have any thoughts on that, or shall we get another question?
I could give some thoughts on the storytelling aspect. I think that the stories start. I mean, they have to start somewhere, and then they can go anywhere. So I think it's just important to find basically a start, like something that connects that logo with the company, and from there you can just go anywhere you want. I mean, simply said, just make it up, but basically just find one thing that might connect the logo or the branding to the company, and that already is a great start.
And think about the values, right? We discussed values so much tonight. So, yeah, I hope that answers your question. I did see a hand up front. Let's get the mic there.
Hello, my name is Sam. I have a question, I guess, for Stan, but also jump in if you have any other thoughts on that. So obviously we heard a lot from a B2B perspective, and also later on in the discussion also a lot from a B2C perspective, with also students here being on the panel. And I was wondering what is specific about the rebranding process in B2B, like in the B2B sector? How does it really differentiate itself from rebranding in the B2C sector? What does a B2B company need to pay careful attention to? And how does it like differentiate? Like, how is the process different to a B2C company?
Yeah. I mean, personally, I've never did any rebranding in
Obviously,
B2C, but from what I also know from theory, I mean, B2C, we talk about products, product rebranding, and I think products themselves, they will be easier rebranded or adjusted because the market environment is changing, and or you get new flavors or you get different variations, so you start, your brand is evolving. In B2B, it's done more carefully because, as I said, there is an impact. If, for example, if I'm, going back to B2C, if I rebrand my product, I don't need to rebrand the entire company. I need to rebrand my packaging, my marketing, my messaging. So the whole marketing mix from my product. If I decide to do a corporate rebranding, meaning I'm going to rebrand the company, I told you, I need to go rebranding 150 locations worldwide with everything that you can imagine that has a logo type. So therefore, the consideration needs to be made very carefully because it's a costly endeavor. But in essence, the process is the same. I mean, if you decide to rebrand on a product level in B2C or in B2B, there needs to be a reason for it. There needs to be a value for it. People need to buy into it. And I think the process you go through is then more or less the same when you have taken that decision that you will go for a rebrand. Probably the impact with B2C is also bigger because you want to see results. I mean, if you rebrand, you want to see higher sales. And so if you talk about a food product that's going to rebrand or a car brand, I mean, this is B2C, so the immediate impact of the brand is we want to see increased sales. That's also not something you see in B2B. I mean, the values there are more, are we being identified as a brand? Do people buy into our new brand? Is it being well appreciated, but you do not expect an immediate impact on your sales figures when you do a corporate rebrand. So I think these things are the main similarities and differences between B2C and B2B.
Maybe just a follow-up. How do you connect with your final consumer who obviously sees the packaging and which might also be relevant for you knowing how they feel about it? Yeah. How do you connect with the final consumer and how does it influence this rebranding process?
I think the final consumer has no influence on the rebranding process. I mean, maybe they do when we say, okay, we want to appeal to all audiences and we want to appeal to job seekers and we also want to hear what they do from the rebranding, so you can do different target groups and involve them, say this is who we are, so that type of insights you can do, but we do sometimes also involve consumers when it comes to the development of material, of packaging. So then you also do, so traditionally our business B2B doesn't have much direct impact with an end consumer. Sometimes we manage that our logo or our brand is on the packaging, But in say we are providing the packaging, if you go to the supermarkets, you're not going to see much branding on the packaging type. So it's the brands from our customers that are in the forefront.
Thanks. Thank you. Maybe you first, and then we'll go elsewhere as well.
Thank you. My question would be, to what extent rebranding is for internal purposes? Maybe rephrased differently, is rebranding used to drive cultural change, or does cultural change, like inter alia, drive a rebranding?
Chicken or the egg, or in B2B, yes. I mean, the examples that I've given from these companies that rebranded, that came through internal changes or market environment changes or company going through transformation. And then the best way to visualize that transformation and now telling to the whole side, the outside world, but also the inside world, that we are a renewed company. You do it through your rebranding. It's the opportunity to tell your story again, what you stand for, and how you make that visible through your brand. So it goes from the inside out, so you involve people from different levels. You define on a high level what is the overall strategy, what do we want to stand for, and you drill that down to the organization, get more commitment, insights, involvement, because again, you can't do it all out of your ivory tower in Vienna. You need to have the local involvement, and then local adaptation and insights are crucial to make that happen.
And there's challenges too, right? It's not the easiest journey ever. Like for every NVIDIA who focused on AI, you have other companies that have fallen out of the way just through their rebrand or their internal cultural perspective. So it's not as simple and cut and dry. But does anyone else have any thoughts on that? Shit, I think I put them on the spot there. Well, I see a question in the back, actually. Or Triumph,
yeah,
go ahead.
Talking about when it comes to like rebranding, a lot of people believe that rebranding is just like changing either your product, your logo, your design, whatsoever. But also there are companies such as Google that change like the whole organizational structure, trying to attract the the employees, and try to make the work life more balancing and more attractive, so they, like their HR department, try to be more innovative and try to make like the working environment as a branding itself. So also try to focus not only just on the outside of the world, but especially internally, and try to make an effective working environment for your company.
Yeah. Again, with Gen Z, very important. Work-life balance. Yeah. That's part of your internal branding, your positioning. Absolutely.
Yeah. Yes. Let's get the mic in front. Oh, actually, yes, Johannes, go ahead. I know him, so sorry.
It's all good.
He already got the mic.
You get it after me, Annie. Okay, so good evening also from my side. I'm Johannes. I have just looked up a few failed rebrandings because I was interested in what can go wrong. And in fact, all the failed rebrandings I saw were like B2C companies, or at least that I found like really quick. So my question would be, how do you guarantee that the rebranding does not fail? Also, do you maybe then know examples of B2B companies where a rebranding like failed, and how would you prevent that?
Easy question.
No, I've also actually been looking today. I've also looked at, but most indeed were B2C. I mean, if you look for examples in Google, because I was also type of preparing the conversation, I could not find many because they're also not that well known, so there are not many case studies. So the examples you saw were mostly B2B, and then indeed in the impact of sales. Sorry, what was the other part of your question?
Like how did you, if like you said, you also made some rebrandings in all the firms that you've basically worked in. So what were like the essentials to not fail with the rebranding? As it's like, I think also the question just before me was like in the direction, who's like benefiting more in the B2B context from the rebranding, internal stakeholders or external stakeholders?
In first instance, the internal stakeholders. In order to do that successful, I mean, it's a long process. So it's first of all defining your goals and objectives again. Why are we going to do this? What is going to be the value? Getting the buy-in. You cannot rush a rebranding. So thinking of, okay, let's do a rebranding, and it needs to be done by the end of next year, and with half of the budget, then I mean, don't start. So the whole preparational phase and getting the insights from internal stakeholders and the buy-in. So it needs to start at the top level because the entire company is going to be involved. And you don't have a rebranding specialist on every location site, so the workload is going to come up on people additionally to what they are doing. So therefore, it always starts at the top, that the decision has been taken, and then you need a very careful preparation, indeed defining what do we stand for, what do we like, why are we doing this, pros and cons, decision has been taken, you have a new brand, and then you start rolling out implementation, but yeah, that from the moment that decision is taken till full rollout, that can be easily 2 years in a big B2B environment.
Thank you.
Great. Finally, your turn. I'm sorry for passing you over last time.
So good evening, also from my side. I actually have a question which suits perfectly to Johannes' question. You've talked a lot about change, and obviously rebranding involves some change in the process, but you've also touched points like major keywords, authenticity, identity, stability in global, like in times of a lot of global challenges. What would you say, Stan, is from your personal experience, and what would you say during the rebranding process, what are the key points that a company should not change in order to keep the stability, the authenticity, and in order to not lose the identity that consumers or even companies?
I mean, I don't think that I can tell you these are the elements exactly that you need to take, but you have to make the analysis of your company, again, that brand matrix I showed you, where you identify how are we being perceived today and what are our brand values, which of these brand values will still be valuable moving forward. There might be some that is okay, it's not such a problem if we get rid of, say, conservatism, for example, if that would be one. But stability, I mean, same, but not so strong, but stability is something you like to keep. So I think that's an analysis that every company does, and especially if it's companies with a long tradition, you like to tell your origin of your story. So there are certain brand values that are connected to the history of your company, and that's part of your storytelling. Because if people say, if I tell you SCA, you might have never heard of it, but I can tell you a fascinating story about SCA and what they've been through. So that's what you want to keep in your rebranding, that heritage that is valuable.
Maybe just a quick follow-up, because you showed us I think it was SUU, the company that did like Essity from, yeah. How did you perceive this? Because my first thought was, okay, but isn't this risky if the company has long traditions, or will consumers know about this, or will companies know about the Essity or with the second?
Yeah, I'm not sure if you know about Essity as a name. I mean, it's one of the bigger European consumer goods company, but only since 2017. But I think especially in that case, I mean, I was not on that level in the boardroom, but that has been a long-term strategy where at one point the company has decided, okay, we are in forests and pulp and paper, but we see growth opportunities in hygiene. We are expanding our portfolio into hygiene. That is B2C. So that is really a complete different business than the forest and the operational pulp B2B that they were doing. So if you then split a company where you can really focus on the assets and the value of both, what is really completely different, B2B, the forest and the pulp, and B2C, consumer hygiene products. And you can also see it in their financial results and their share price. I mean, since they went to the stock market, I mean, it financially, I think the shareholders were pleased with that decision that they decided at the time to split the company in two.
Thank you.
Any other questions in the room? Yes, please. We'll take two more, and then we'll start moving towards the networking.
Hi, as thinking of ESRS and Green Claim Directive, I think that the change of the business model can be or would be the biggest driver for adopting a trademark. Mm-hmm. So I would like to know from Stan how far this point was important by recreating, rebranding in the process. Because just, you know, mm-hmm. when I was thinking, the logo was always green or used to be green before, mm-hmm. but when I think of the airport in Vienna, it's now green, which, you know, doesn't really make sense because we talked about greenwashing, so I would like to know how much the business model or even small changes played a role in your process.
Yeah, I mean, I think the green is indeed the color for natural and for environment. It's also something that we wanted to keep because it's something we can see over the analysis via our competitors that our green dot is recognizable. I think also luckily we will not be accused about greenwashing because our logo is green. You need it's about data again, and the moment that you start looking into a company, you will easily find if it's these days if it's greenwashing or if it's really a sustainable company that is driving sustainability performance. So I don't think it's that difficult anymore when you have a stock listed company then that you need to report on your performance. Also from the regulator perspective, that will become more and more important with the EU Green Deal as well. We want to reduce carbon footprint. So these big, not only paper and packaging, but big industries, they need to reduce their carbon footprint and they need to report on it and they have to make investments. So I'm not too worried that's in that aspect that we could be accused or people would assume that could be linked to greenwashing.
All right. Does anyone have any final thoughts that they'd like to ask or anything that's still there? No, I can see a very happy audience already. Oh, actually, I think I have a question in the back there. Let's take the last one for tonight.
Yes, thank you. Well, I think the EU Green Deal and especially the Green Claim Directive mm-hmm. Could, in a certain way, even be a chance for companies like Mayr-Melnhof, mm-hmm. because when you study the topic closely, you'll find that with the new directive, as a company, it's much harder, or you can't fake perfection in this area, but you have to show mm-hmm. effort. Mm-hmm. And if your storytelling is good in that direction, companies like Mayr-Melnhof, who, well, by their business wouldn't have a chance to fake perfection, have a good chance, if they make a good storytelling, showing their efforts and the steps they take, mm-hmm. then it could be a chance.
True, yeah. I mean, we have also been recently awarded by the AAA as ESD, so an independent audit about our sustainability performance and transparency. They say we have no choice. We need to do this. It's not. I mean, if we don't do it, we're out of business in a couple of years. So it is still a USP, but I think also in a number of years, sustainability will not be a USP anymore because it will be mandated. So you also need to keep evolving. You need to keep further improving. And today you can still make a change with sustainability, but I think in a couple of years, when regulations will be more tight on sustainability and green claim directives, that is going to be a hygiene factor for many brands, because otherwise you're not going to survive.
But I don't think you're wrong to say it's not an opportunity as well. It definitely is. Mm-hmm. And thankfully, a lot of companies are jumping on that opportunity. It's better for the world, but it's also good for their money. So
good for planet, good for the company.
Yeah,
yes.
Everyone's happy. Well, with that, I would say that we'd like to wrap up our Q&A. I want to thank the audience first before I talk to the panelists as well for being such a great audience, paying attention to everything that our wonderful panelists had to say today. Stick around. I think we have a little bit of networking planned after as well. You can have a little informal chat with any of the people on stage here today. I'm also around in case you want to talk. But I'd like to thank you all for coming, and I hope you had a wonderful time. Thank you.
Thank you.